As progressive Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib calls for radical change, tweeting this, quote, "It wasn't an accident. Policing in our country is inherently and intentionally racist. Daunte Wright was met with aggression and violence. I am done with those who condone government-funded murder. No more policing, incarceration, and militarization. It can't be reformed." Bret, thank you for joining us this morning, and I'd like to start with you on this. What are your top-line thoughts there on the situation unfolding in Brooklyn Center, Minnesota?
Well, good afternoon. If I could just go back to the ceremony of the Capitol Police Officer Evans. And Harris, I thought you were really eloquent coming out of the president's remarks about the family and about what President Biden said there. And I agree with Jessica that the president is really, really good as consoler in chief. We've seen that numerous times, including the 500,000 COVID deaths and that speech he delivered there, because he comes from a place of empathy. He comes from a place of truthfulness about that sorrow that he's seen with the loss of his wife and daughter and the loss of his son, Beau. And that speech today touched those same things, talking to that family. But here's where I'm linking it to. The dichotomy of that and Nancy Pelosi there and Chuck Schumer talking about the importance of the Capitol Police Department, the importance of policing, and the dichotomy of the politics of the progressive side of the Democratic Party, like Rashida Tlaib, Congresswoman, saying no more policing, no more incarceration, and others kind of echoing that in the wake of what we've seen, I think is really stark. And it's going to be an issue for Democrats going forward to have to answer to these two thoughts about policing and how tough that job is and what has come in the wake of it. Each incident is different, and we're not excusing anything, but overall, the dichotomy of those two things is really interesting to see.
That's exactly right. And Kayleigh, Bret brings up the future potential accountability for these representatives politically with these comments. Their representative Rashida Tlaib saying no more incarceration, no more policing, that it is inherently and intentionally racist.
Yeah, it's remarkable. It's an appalling tweet. It's a disgusting tweet. It's a tweet that America will not take well. As we know, about 18%, yes, 18, that low, support the defund the police movement. She also went on to call for that very movement to be reignited, a movement that moderate Democrats on a call between House members in the wake of the election said, stop saying that. You're doing damage to our party. And indeed, they're right about that. You know, it's nice to hear Senator Schumer stand up there and really eulogize Officer Evans in a beautiful way. And he said, you know, he always said these four words, Officer Evans, I'm here to help. And I would say to Schumer and others, that's most of the police officers in this country. That phrase, I'm here to help, that's the kind of servant mentality of the vast majority of police officers like Officer Evans. And at the White House podium, I really hope Jen Psaki has read that tweet from Rashida Tlaib in light of that beautiful memorial service we just saw for a hero and is asked to respond to it, because she should be held to account, her party should, for that kind of rhetoric.
Harris, Bret brought up the dichotomy of the current climate, and as you have said, we are in a complicated place. Communities are in anguish, both emotionally and also literally, as they're being burned down, their livelihoods are being destroyed. Police departments are being defunded, officers are being vilified, and all this as we speak, as fallen Capitol Police Officer Billy Evans lays in honor there at the Capitol.
I wonder if people like Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, though, want us to actually see each other the way that we really are. I mean, I sometimes wonder that is it easier to use us as props in politics if they don't allow the sides of people to see each other as human beings? If you make everything about racism, I mean, what we are learning about that situation, and we still don't know all the facts, but we learned a lot from that video with that audio, because the police chief in Brooklyn Center said he decided to release it early so people could see what he called a mistake being made. She pulled a gun instead of a taser. I mean, is that training? We don't know what that is. But to out and out call everything racist means that we can't even have substantive conversations about the things that matter most in life. Bret put it so well. There are two stark ways of looking at it. I say it's more than a stark line. I say that we're in two different quadrants. We can't even see the line. We can't even see each other. And for some politicians, that's a good thing, Because if we aren't humanized to each other, if cops don't see us as human and we don't see them as human, then you can manipulate both sides. And you can make both sides hate each other. And I guess if all your goal is to keep your seat, that'll benefit you. But if you want to bring America together, that is not how you do it.
And there in Brooklyn Center, the city manager, Kurt Bogany, was just fired by the mayor. And it was because he called for due process for the officer, because he pointed out that she was put on administrative leave per department policy. And I just want to point out that when I was a federal managing attorney, I engaged in disciplinary measures of employees and terminations and put them on administrative leave and the like. And part of the reason that I adhered to a certain structure in place was in part for their protection, of course, but it was also for the state's protection. It protected the government that I represented against subsequent causes of action they might have against us. And we know that in unintentional shootings, the protocol is that there are two investigations, right? There's an internal one to determine whether any department policy was violated, and if so, to recommend commensurate punishment or discipline, including termination, and also an external one. So there in Minnesota, it's the Criminal Bureau of Apprehension to determine when and if charges should be filed. And I bring those up to point out that the purpose of those ensures that due process so that the potential errant employee is protected, and also the state. And Leslie, when the mayor terminated the city manager, he said, I want to ensure that the city benefits basically from good leadership at all levels throughout the city government. So what was it about calling for due process that protects both the officer and the state from the officer? What about that, calling for due process, what about that wasn't good leadership?
Is that to Leslie?
Leslie, that's for you. Leslie.
Oh. Sorry, I thought it was. I just didn't want to jump in. You know, everyone is entitled to due process. You know, our laws are clear, Constitution is clear, but I want to go back to that due process, that video, and the investigation. On my radio show, I have spoken to police officers. Some say what they've seen looks accidental, but some say they're perplexed because they were trained that their predominant hand has their weapon and their other hand, so for me it would be right, and their other hand, left, would have the taser. Others have told me the feel of the taser, the weight of the taser, the pull of the trigger is different. Looting and violence are wrong, period. However, the African-American community have also told me, that call into my radio show, every time something like this happens, it's yet another day they feel that they wake up in America where an African-American's life has been taken, accidentally or otherwise, by a white police officer, and they're angry. The violence and the looting do not achieve the goal. The violence and the looting don't help us with a solution. Quite frankly, saying having no policing, no incarceration doesn't help either. But obviously, we need some retraining in some of our police departments, perhaps this one as well. And obviously, we need to have conversations as well as solutions to these problems, which violence, looting, rioting, burning certainly are not. Then again, we cannot overlook the disproportionate numbers that are affected by those in the African-American community.
Well, Leslie, if you're going to need those things, you're going to need money for them. You're going to need funding for them if you're going to need those things. And by the way, as a black person, I wake up too with a broken heart, but I also have a broken heart when like 30 to 40 people are shot in Chicago and it's black on black crime. I mean, if we want to talk about having a broken heart and having an honest reaction to the pain of loss, then we can talk about that. But if we're going to solve problems and you want to infuse all these great things into the system for police, you're going to need cash to do that. Defunding the police is not how you get there.
But
right.
like Kaylee said, and I agree with Kaylee on something that she said earlier. Majority of Democrats like myself, centrist and moderates, do not agree with defunding the police, do not agree with that phrase, or really what the intention was, which was reformation of the police department, or as President Barack Obama said today, we need to reimagine the police department.